What is going on, guys? Welcome to the Wednesday night live stream. Today we have on the one and only Adam from Frag Garage. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, I'm doing well.
Excellent. Good to see you back. So you just went on an amazing, wonderful trip to Indo, and you
Did.
went to a ton of different coral farms, which I'm very jealous of, but it sounds like a pretty amazing trip. So how was it?
Yeah, well, actually, I will correct you. I was only able to go to one coral farm. I plan on
Okay.
going to more, but I was
Yep.
traveling with my fiance, and she didn't really want to have the trip be all about my coral stuff because it bores her to death. So, but one day was committed. So,
Yeah.
it was still very, very informative and super cool. So, yeah.
Was it the first time you were actually like out at the source, or have you been there
Yeah,
before?
so I visited Bali Aquarium in 2018
Yeah.
and met Vincent Chalias there. That was super cool. Tried to get back there this time, but it didn't really quite line up. So I've been to like a packing facility before, but this was the first time I actually got to go to one of the ocean farms as well.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's pretty cool.
so that was super cool.
Is there any
Yeah.
like new perspective that you have after physically being there?
Yeah, I mean, I would say one of the main things I noticed, actually, before I go on, is the music. The music is quite loud in my ears. Is there anything? Why am I hearing it so much?
I don't hear any music, so it might be just you.
Oh, weird. Okay, hold on.
Oh, you probably didn't pause the YouTube.
I thought that I closed it. Okay, hold
Yeah.
on. We got to get through this because like the music is just jamming right now. So,
Sounds good.
yeah, I mean, I might need to just close the chat window and try that again.
All right. All right. So I've never, yeah, I think it's just your side. You're probably hearing the intro
Yeah,
music.
it didn't work. I'm pretty sure Skype is the only app open right now. So it's very strange.
Is your phone playing music? Linked to your
Yeah, it
headphones?
was my Spotify. Okay, I figured it out.
Perfect.
Okay, so
Back in
here,
business.
now I could think. Yeah, I mean, probably the most informative part to me of actually going to the ocean farm was seeing the corals in the actual conditions that they're grown in. It's not really what you would necessarily expect. Like, it's one thing is that it's highly seasonal. So, like, when I was there, it was pretty. The tide was a little higher at the time. That being said, but like, it wasn't very clear. The visibility wasn't very good, and like the corals were not in very, very bright light. And that kind of got me thinking about, the exposure time that we have to our peak periods of daylight. It probably is a fairly short window.
Yeah.
I would imagine on days, probably in the non-rainy season, like we were there right in the peak of the rainy season. So, but I would say not in the rainy season is probably better clarity, and the sun probably penetrates at a higher value throughout the afternoon, but it was dark and murky,
Really?
and you see those
Yeah.
corals on the racks that they grow them on, and they're like pretty gray looking. So like, you can kind of tell species. You might have like, corals that are blue or red kind of stand out, but a lot of those like rainbow tenuis just kind of look like gray with maybe a little pink highlight or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Like, I mean, I was able to take about, well, the picture in your in the thumbnail.
Yeah.
I was able to go and collect a bunch of stuff and then actually go take it back to the farm right away, or to the packing facility right away, and see it under their lighting. And it was just like, oh, like poof, like all the colors popped, right? So
Yeah. That's awesome.
so-
Have you ever went diving with UV flashlight?
No, and I kind of wish I asked them if they had something like that, and it didn't seem like they did. I mean, this is like pretty low, like, yeah, I mean this in a totally respectful way. It's a fairly low tech operation, right? Like this
Yeah.
is, Bali and specifically out of countries in Indonesia is kind of a developing type of country. So things are just kind of done with what they have around. And, this farm had about, I think they had 4 different farms, and then the one packing shipping facility where all the farms kind of get channeled through. And they said they had about 60 employees. So
That's a good chunk.
yeah, that's something that's I think pretty cool about the industry, is that it does offer a lot of jobs to these places. So
Yeah, that's actually more than I would
yeah.
have thought of, actually.
Well, I mean, workers are cheap there. So
Yeah.
there's a set of guys that their job is to. I mean, just in case anybody doesn't, know what mariculture is, it's basically like a way of farming in the ocean. So So the supplier will essentially set up these, usually they're metal racks, and they have a way of fastening the coral on these bases onto these racks. And then they have broodstock colonies. And the broodstock colonies are kind of like their mother colonies that they cut all their little frags from. So then they grow these frags out for, I think, about 6 months or more, and then collect them and get them ready to ship. And,
Nice.
the farm I was at was pretty much all acropora, but depending on the location, like I think up more in the north, they have more deeper water stuff, like some of the deep water acros and LPS, like torches and stuff, are more suited for the water up there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like this farm was, I think at low tide, you can pretty much just like almost stand on the bottom and grab corals. Yeah. Like it's pretty shallow.
That's pretty crazy, but not as much light as you thought, eh? I mean, partially seasonal, but
well, yeah, I think I think the peak light is probably quite intense, but it definitely makes you think, like, would there be a benefit in our tanks to, trying some kind of seasonal change where we actually run our nutrients a little bit higher for half the year, and we, run our lighting a little bit lower for half the year, which sounds kind of counterintuitive, but it's actually probably more the way it is in nature. And then half the year, it, run it a little brighter and a little cleaner.
That would be interesting.
I don't know if there would be any merit to it. But it got me thinking our tanks are almost too consistent, too stable, too much the same.
Do you think that makes weaker corals from it being too consistent? Like, do you think they just get like complacent and they're like, they don't like change versus in the wild where they're like high nutrients, high light, low light?
Yeah, I mean, the other part of it too might be that maybe corals need a little bit of a rest. Maybe they need a darker day every once in a while where they're not, blasted with light. Like, something I've noticed with my Euphilia is especially torches will like eject some zooxanthellae out the mouth of the polyp, every so often. I wonder if that happens in the wild or not. I don't know.
Yeah.
Is it in like an excess of that zooxanthellae overpopulating? I don't know, but I mean, it'd be interesting to do some kind of testing with that. Like, even because this system behind me, the SPS system, like I could try, taking the par down quite a bit on one side. And because I know that the water is the same, I can actually see how it reflects on the corals.
An interesting one, Niagara Fire Corals, thank you. An interesting one that I've seen before was where someone was running, it was either a 6 or 8 hour schedule, like on, off, to basically sneak in an extra day in the day. And I wonder, because you're saying, shorter light periods, but I wonder how that would compare. Like, I don't know, if you ever want to do it, it'd be really interesting to see if you notice a difference from tank to tank. But
yeah, I've tried that before, actually, like the double photo period in one day. And I don't think I got twice the growth, but I may have gotten more growth. Yeah. The problem is that there ended up being a big chunk of the day that I couldn't really work on that tank because it was dark. So, I kind of gave up on that idea, but I would be interested to try it again.
That's fair.
Yeah, because you could do like a 6 hour. Yeah, I'm not sure how you would stage it, but yeah, there's obviously like photosynthesis has a way that it works where the corals take in and process CO2 and then they expel it. And that's kind of like the up and down of the day. So as long as they have enough time for that photosynthesis process to, do its thing, I think it probably could work. I'm surprised more commercial farmers haven't really talked about doing this, but
I know.
Could be cool for sure.
I've been interested. So are all the corals on the thumbnail, are those ones you cherry picked and brought back?
So, I mean, some of them, honestly, it was pretty rough when I was there. Like I had to dive, like we were just snorkeling. So I had to dive like at least 2 meters down to get to some of them, maybe even a little bit deeper. So they give you like a glove to keep on one hand. So you swim down, grab onto the rack, and then you use your other hand to grab something. And a couple times I'd just dive down and just be like, okay, well, I'm not coming up with nothing. So I just grabbed something.
Fair enough.
I mean, we were a little past the low tide, right? So it wasn't the ideal time to be there. But I definitely did bring home a few of the pieces that I picked there. And I was glad because they were actually ones I didn't see at the packing facilities. So
bonus.
So that was kind of cool. Out of the whatever 1,000 acropora I saw there.
I guess it would almost be harder to pick them underwater too, right? Especially like if you're not scuba diving, if you're just like, holding your breath and diving down, trying to pick in your
Yeah.
length of breath you're holding.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny too. I didn't realize how big the farm was. And I spent way too much time on the first few racks, like
Yeah.
just making sure I kind of took them all in. And then like I started moving out a little bit and I was like, oh, this site is actually like 10 times bigger than I thought. And I only scratched the surface of it,
Yeah.
So, yeah. So something else that's kind of interesting, because I got to know the owner of this farm pretty well. I spent the afternoon with them. So they have, like I said, they have farms at different locations, and they've tried farms at different locations. There's a location in Banyuwangi, which is in the east of Java, and that's where a lot of the really nice tenuous come from. Like coral seems to grow really well there. And he said that it was a really like tough area to start a farm because when they first kind of, I guess, got the rights to farm in a certain area, they just put a little bit of coral in on a couple racks just to kind of see how it would do. And they gave it a little time, came back, and it was all gone. So somebody had stolen all of it.
Dang.
So he said they tried again. Sure enough, all gone. So they abandoned that site. And then he said they eventually got the rights to a different site that was like more private and less accessible from other people. But it gets you thinking because it's like, every farm kind of has their unique brood stock that they grow their corals from. Yep. But if these farms are stealing from each other, then, it's like at a certain point, everybody's kind of got the same stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So they go out in the wild, collect it. They make frags and they grow the frags on the rack. And then once it's, a decent size, then they sell it. Do they have, I guess, mother colonies they frag off of on the racks as well?
So that's what we call the brood stock colonies.
Yeah.
So, and something that I learned when I was there too, is they actually have to apply with the government for the permits to collect brood stock. So if they want to get new brood stock to have new corals, they can't just like go and wild collect on their own. They actually have to get the rights to do it. So, you could actually see some of the broodstock colonies like on the same racks as some of the frags were growing on, or mini colonies, I could say. So it's all in the same area generally. So
that's kind of cool. Yeah. So it's interesting. So they basically need permission every time they collect. They take their pieces, they grow them out, and then they frag off of the broodstock, I guess. So they're
which is interesting because. There's also like the kind of the opposite version of mariculture is wild collecting, and wild collecting essentially is broodstock. Yeah. So you'd think if they had the rights to collect wild, they could just keep some of that in their farm. But I think the thing is that these farms, like this one I was at, like wanted to be fully 100% legit and not take any chances. And he told me that in 2018, when the export ban happened in Indonesia, that's actually the last time I was there.
Yeah.
A lot of the farms that were not really doing it right, they got kind of got weeded out. So I think it was kind of a good cleansing for the industry because it kind of left the people that were doing it properly behind. So
now, in your opinion, do you think there's much of a difference in terms of like health and coral happiness, long term versus ones that are wild caught versus mariculture? Because they're both from the ocean.
Yeah.
One of them, I guess, is fragged and healed essentially in the ocean versus fresh cut off. But
should I start my list, because I have a big list of pros and cons of mariculture?
Heck yes, you should.
Okay.
Enlighten
us. The
first
pro is that they come in looking awesome. Assuming the shipping goes well, the shipping is like, let's say, less than 30 hours from, destination to tank. There's definitely colors that I've seen in freshly imported shipments that I have never really been able to achieve again. There's this sort of iridescent metallic colors that come in, that, especially Millipora.
My favorite.
You just, I don't know, if you see it when they come in and it's like, you just hope you can bring it back, but it's very, very difficult.
Yeah.
So if anybody knows the secrets to those like iridescent metallic colors, and I think part of that also is has to do with the spectrum of light moving across the sky and getting into every little nook and cranny of the coral versus our sort of more, flat light coming from above.
Yeah.
Let's see. So and then the other thing is like the broodstock that most of these farms have, like they've specifically collected that stuff because they know it looks good. Like they,
Yeah.
it's not just like, oh, we grabbed that coral there and that coral there, and whatever, it's some coral. We'll see how it looks, right? Like it's
Yeah.
like this coral has been picked because they tried that pink millie and it was like all right, and then they would look for more pink millies and they found an even pinker one.
Yeah.
So they're like, that's going to be our pink millie. So I didn't really see a single coral at this farm that was poopy. Like everything was nice.
Yeah. Well,
So,
I guess if it looks good under natural sunlight, you just know it's gonna look even better under our blue lights, right?
yeah, absolutely. No, it blew me away to see what I grabbed in the ocean under, just blue LED, kind of deeper blue LED spectrum. It was just like, and that's even like, that's going to be even slightly better than what we get when it's imported, because it's like just straight out of the ocean. Like I got to see it an hour after I got out of the ocean. You know what I mean? So yeah. Next thing I would say, I mean, obviously if you're buying, and I'm mostly referring to Acropora right now, but if you're buying Mariculture, then you're going to be usually buying a whole colony versus a frag. So, you're kind of getting good value in size for the money. Yeah, and trust me, I have a lot of cons too. So we're just going for the pros first.
Okay.
So obviously the price point, for the size of the piece is quite good. So this is definitely a double-edged sword. Is the bases that they come on, they will have some good bacteria, especially for tanks that say don't have like real live rock in them. You're actually getting a little piece of live rock like from the ocean. So that
some diversity.
And obviously there will be some negatives that go along with that, but I'll talk about that in a bit. One thing you get is you get acro crabs a lot of the time, which is super cool. So
I love
something
those
that
guys.
I do if I want to keep an acro crab and I want to dip the coral is I get like a skewer, and you kind of get good at learning how they move. So I figured out how to kind of chase them off the coral into just a thing of the tank water. And then after I dip it, I'll just kind of give it a little push back under the coral. Yeah. So, those are nice to have. Those are pretty cool. But you have to watch out for the gorilla crabs. Obviously those are the bad ones. I think we talked about this already, but it does create jobs for, the developing world, which was really great. The other thing that I kind of noticed, and actually I kind of was incorrect on saying I didn't go to another farm last time. I did go to a farm in another area last time, and it was pretty cool seeing how like a farm that has been there for a while actually creates a reef where there wasn't a reef. Like most of these areas that they set up these mariculture farms are, it's kind of like a spot of ocean or beachfront that didn't really have that much going on. Like that's the reason they were able to do it there, is because, okay, sure, the water and the flow is good, but it just didn't have any rockiness or reef there. So if you put some racks down, all of a sudden you've got all this coral growing, and then you get all these fish coming along, and it creates this whole ecosystem, which is super cool.
That is cool.
And yeah, the last location that I was at was in a town called Chanidasa. And it was like, so they had started the farm, I think about 5 years before the main one, in a little bit deeper water. And you couldn't even see the racks that were the original racks, because there was coral had grown so large. Like it was just
that's
like,
awesome.
it was this beautiful reef that had just developed there. So,
cool.
So I think that's kind of cool that, the coral kind of in a way kind of become part of the habitat, no matter what happens with the industry there. If it gets abandoned, it's like all that coral may spawn and carry on, and, like,
that's true. That's cool.
Create more reef in itself. Right.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. I mean, I know Vincent Chalias is big on doing this like educational programs and stuff like that there. So, creating awareness of reefs and coral and education. I think that's cool that they can do that in those places. So, so that's the other sort of pro. So now I got the cons list. You ready?
Yeah. All right. Ready for it.
You were alluding to this. So they don't always hold their color that well. I can say for sure there's certain species that I've seen imported over the years that I'm just like, yeah, oh, like that looks cool when it comes in, but like, have I seen it in a person's tank after 6 months and it still has that pink tip or whatever? Like it's just, now, you never know, right? Like,
do you think that it's like nutrient related? Do you think it's trace element related? Like, do you have any theories of what do you think the difference is?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. Like, these farms are using ocean water at the facility too.
Yeah.
So generally, like, the corals are coming from a situation where you know, it's like the perfect, well, not say perfect, but let's just say it's like a natural condition. Actually, that was a pro that I missed, is that the corals do come in really healthy. Like, you know, the polyps are fat. Like, as long as they ship well, they're usually going to come in really healthy. Yeah, I mean, it really depends. Like, you know, some of those really, really subtle color things I talked about might have to do with trace elements. You know, but I've been questing after the trace element thing a little bit more over the past 6 months, and I think things look a little bit better, but it's not night and day, you know.
It's that extra like 10-15%. It's not like, yeah.
Yeah.
Want to know my theory?
Yeah.
I think in the ocean, there's a constant supply of food for all the corals, where the ocean doesn't really have to worry about your nutrients getting crazy. So I think the corals are just getting that much more nutrients as they're pulling stuff out of the water column 24/7. Where our crystal clear tank water and lack of constant food source is probably, that's my guess of what gives that extra bit of.
Yeah, and I mean, that's one of the reasons I think we justify the elevated nitrate and phosphate, you know, higher nutrient levels for some systems, is like, you know, you're trying to compensate for the fact that they're not getting food through, you know, feeding on microfauna, right? But it's not the same, right?
Yeah.
It just ain't the same.
It's not the same.
So no, that's definitely part of it. And I mean, I can say from my experience, you know, there's some stuff that comes in looking good, and like even one of my favorite pieces from this shipment is like, I just looked at it a couple days ago and it's starting to peel from the base. You know, I mean, it's just like, you know, and my conditions, all my corals of that species like kicking ass right now. So
nice.
You know, it's just kind of how it goes. Like, you know, you're definitely going to lose a certain percentage of them, and you're going to lose color on certain ones. Some pieces will brown out for 6 months, and then they might color back up to some form of what they originally were. Some pieces will look better than they originally did. You know, that's the other thing too. So
Russian roulette, what you get in the end.
Yeah. So next one is, I find that there's a little bit of a lack of species diversity coming into the hobby through mariculture. I think there's mostly what I'm seeing is Millipora and tenuis, and not that I don't like those species. It seems to be like the focus right now. And there's just so many other cool species out there, and I'd just be nice to see more. I mean, if you were to go back and look at what some of these farms were bringing in 10 years ago, it's a very, very different collection of stuff. And some of those corals didn't do that well in our tanks. Like Abrolensis and Robusta were two species that were kind of a big stubby stag with like a pink tip. And I mean, I don't know, they never did that well for me. They always came in just looking so good. Like they would, you know, to somebody that didn't know, you would look at that in order and be like, I want that one for sure. And then it's like, just not going to hold. So fair. But yeah, no, it's a little bit of a monoculture in that way, which gets me to another thing. So this was something that was interesting that I learned from the owner of this farm, is the broodstock colonies that they had at this farm have been the same for about 7 or 8 years. They haven't applied with their government to collect new broodstock for Acropora since they essentially started, you know, their main farming. And that kind of makes me think, like, we're not getting a lot of different corals when we're bringing in mariculture orders. Like, you might think like, oh, I'm going to get something crazy that nobody has. It's like, that's not going to happen. You're only going to get the same stuff. So if you want to bring in a mariculture order, you see something you think is unique, you want to give it a name, it's like the chances are really good that somebody else is going to get that same coral, and hopefully they don't give it another freaking name, because we already have too many names for the same thing.
That makes me laugh, is when I find certain corals and they'll have like 3 different names. It's the exact same thing. You know, everyone got on the same probably shipment or order from the supplier, and they'll grew it out for 6 months or a year, and then they'll release it around, you know, within a month or two of each other. It always cracks me up.
It's hard because, I mean, I still like sometimes, like, I like giving names because I enjoy, like, I like thinking about something for a few days and being like, oh yeah, like, you know, and then sometimes it comes to me and I'll, like, you know, wake up my girlfriend and be like, hey, I got it. Here, look at this coral. I'm like, it's called so and so, and she'll just be like, give me a break. But yeah, it's pretty funny.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, that's another thing, like I was saying about the thievery of the mariculture farms, is another reason that, like, you know, if coral are being stolen from one farm to another, because some of them aren't even that far apart, then that's a whole other thing that's just going to share essentially their brood stock from farm to farm. So, because I've definitely seen a lot of the same coral come from different farms.
Yeah.
So, without a doubt.
Oh, that's true.
So, okay, next one. So yeah, let's talk about the bases for a second. So yeah, so mariculture colonies come on, usually they come on either concrete or ceramic bases. And the thing about this is you can get nuisance algae. The other
Mm-hmm.
thing is at the base of, say, an acropora, you can get acropora eating flatworm eggs. And so my thing that I do is I rebase everything that comes in.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll land it, and I'll land it in a system that doesn't have any SPS in it,
Yeah.
and I'll give them a few days to settle, and I don't dip them right away.
Why?
And then
Wise.
because yeah, like I don't want to dip them because they're going into a system that they can't really infect anyways, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
also that system has the LPS system has a bunch of tangs in it, and they just wipe out any algae that's on the bases. So I'm not too concerned about that. But yeah, so then I rebase, I dip, I add to this system. I usually re-dip again within the week, and that seems to be totally fine for pest control. The thing is, you have to be just absolutely sure that you cut off every bit of the coral that isn't living
Perfect.
tissue. Yeah. So it's definitely good practice. But like I said, there's a benefit to keeping those mariculture bases too, because there's good bacteria on them.
Yeah.
But another possible concern, I mean, a really flippy floppy on this one, is since they're concrete, and since this concrete is made in a developing country, who knows how long it's cured for, who knows what kind of chemicals are bound into that concrete, and if it's going to affect our tanks.
There's been a few comments in the chat about having metal and other random stuff mixed in the concrete as well.
Yeah, totally. I mean, a lot of the time, because these are grown on iron racks, you'll see rust on the bottom of the mariculture base. So I would say it's probably for the best to rebase all the time.
Yeah.
But, you know, if it's a brand new system and you say you add your first few corals that are maricultured, maybe cut those bases off and put them in your sump, you know, and then, you know, if you're concerned about the iron or, you know, some chemical leaching out, then pull them off. But yeah, so this farm that I was at, he started doing their corals differently now. He's doing them on acrylic bases, which is kind of cool because nothing's going to leach out from acrylic, and acrylic can be kind of cleaned with the scraper pretty easily. Yeah, and it actually looks pretty good too. So I think it's like probably a good direction, you know, for the industry there.
Acrylic. That's a good way to go.
Yeah, it's kind of cool actually. Yeah. And I think he said it was pretty easy for them because they just buy sheets of acrylic and cut it into, like, you know, hundreds of squares.
Yeah.
You know, and then they just epoxy the frags onto them.
This is probably overkill, but on a random thought, it would be interesting if you had a system where you just threw all the bases in that you've cut off over time, and then do like a DNA, like aquabiomics on it one day, and just see like how crazy diverse it is.
Yeah. Also, like, you got to wonder, like, do an ICP, is there going to be high iron or something like that?
Yeah.
You know, so there's a problem that I have had, and I've been meaning to get some opinions from, like, I'd like to talk to Vincent Chalias about this. Something that I've noticed with mariculture acropora is this green tissue thing in the bottom of the skeleton. And I remember reading years ago about green boring algae. Do you know anything about green boring algae?
I do not.
I think it's kind of like essentially like a parasitic type of algae that populates the skeleton. And it kind of essentially, the coral will start peeling from the base up. And I've noticed this with a lot of acropora, actually, that have come from mariculture farms. And to kind of prove it, I'll say I'll have the same coral that has the green base recession happening, and I'll have fragged a piece from one of the growing tips early on and, you know, put it somewhere else in the system. That piece will always be fine, but the colony will peel. So yeah.
If you have that, do you just frag off, you know, like an inch above it, or what do you do if you actually?
It's hard because it does tend to kind of run through the whole colony pretty quickly. Yeah, it doesn't seem to spread into healthy corals. So it's definitely something to look out for. I've only really noticed it affecting. It seems to affect tenuous more than other corals. The other thing I thought about, it could be totally not the green boring algae thing. It could be something to do with the iron on the racks too, because we know iron affects greens. So I don't know. I'm just kind of spitballing on it, but I've definitely, had great looking pieces. And then I just look at it one day and it's like peeling from the base. And sure enough, it's a green skeleton.
Ah, that
So,
sucks.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm Google imaging it. I've never personally had it, but
yeah.
yeah, it's interesting how it actually bores into
Mhm.
it. That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. So it seems to be fairly common in the farms. And this was actually one of my cons for wild collected corals is that they
Hmm.
don't really have that. They almost never do. I've never seen it in a wild collected
Hmm.
aquaphora. So yeah. Okay, let's move on with the cons. So uh, yeah, I mean, anything coming from overseas is probably going to have a larger carbon footprint as far as the actual shipping. So,
Yep.
that kind of brings us back to the local aquaculture having its reasons to be like a good way to go because,
Yep.
even though we still ship and stuff like that, you're probably your best bet if you want to be an eco-friendly reefer is to just buy locally, right?
Now, on just like a side thought, how do you find like I guess the health and survival rate of maricultured versus like tank raised? Because I know like obviously if you grow it in your tank, all the stuff that grows off of it's adapted to tank life. It's used to it, right?
Hmm.
Versus
Hmm.
something wild, where there's a chance it might RTN or STN on you. Where if it's
Yeah.
happily been in a tank for a year or two, you're pretty safe. Do you find that's much of an issue or a big difference, or?
Yeah. I mean, I find I lose quite a few mariculture pieces and they can come in looking totally great and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's 6 months later but it's
Ah,
like
sucks.
it's unexplainable.
Yeah.
And it has to be something to do with the fact that they're maricultured because it's like I'll have a whole bunch of coral that is like tried and tested adapted to aquarium conditions and
Mm-hmm.
it'll be the same species similar morph or whatever 100%
Yeah.
fine. So yeah, I would say like when you get an order shipped in, you might lose 5 to 10% in the first week.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think it's like in the first 6 months, you might lose another, you know, 5 to 15%. And
Yeah.
then depending on how pro the setup is, let's like, I don't know. I think if you pass the 6 month point, you're probably good to
Okay.
go. Then it's like certified aquarium hardened, you know? So
Now,
that was all my cons for,
how? Okay, one more question.
yes.
On
Yeah, shoot.
ones that you've had that have STN or RTN, have you like fragged off any of the tips? And the tips have been fine, but like the original colony died.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing. So I think like a smart thing to do if you think you have something really cool is to
Backup frag.
just make a backup frag and also put it in somebody else's tank too. Put one in
Yeah.
another part of your tank, put one in somebody else's tank, and it might
Mm-hmm.
do something really cool in that other person's tank too, right?
That's true.
So that's always interesting. So yeah,
Do
I
you
mean,
ever?
kind of a cool way to acquire mariculture corals is probably, to get 3 or 4 people to buy a few colonies together and for everybody to take a piece. And then, like it might die for somebody. It might look
Mhm.
awesome in 6 months for one person. It might look poo brown for another person, right? So,
Hey, backup
yeah.
frags are a good way to go.
Hmm. Hmm.
Even for someone that has two tanks, it's always a good idea to put a little chunk branch into each tank type of thing, right? To see always have
Totally.
backup if one bites the dust.
Yeah. I'm even bad for that. It's like I know I need to back up a lot of this stuff, but I don't always get it into
Yep.
another system as quick as I should. But,
Mm-hmm.
it's always something to do.
Always.
So yeah, my next category was wild collected corals. So wild collected, obviously, like the thing about wild collected is you're going to get unique stuff that
Yep.
doesn't. It's not like that monoculture of mariculture. It's like the possibility of unique stuff is out there. You might just get something that nobody has ever seen before. And that obviously can be really cool because there's a hunger in the hobby for new, right? Like if we only ever had the same corals that we have now, like people would get bored. I mean, I would
Yep.
be okay with it, to be honest. I think we have enough nice stuff now. Like we should be happy, but
Yeah.
it's just it's a human human
Something
trait
new and
to
unique.
want to just get something new and cool. Yeah, every time. But yeah, no, I mean, a lot of the Reef Raft Canada was he was one of the first people I knew that really, I mean, he really got the name game going here.
Mm-hmm.
And he brought in a lot of wild stuff and, he would cook it for 6 months and see what it looked like. And, and that's before a lot of these mariculture farms were farming like the rainbow tenuis and the red polyp, some of those higher end tenuis and stuff like that. So, so he got some pretty cool morphs out of all that wild stuff over the years. And those are some corals that I still have in my systems, and they're some of the best unique ones.
Nice.
And a lot of those, to be honest, I haven't seen come in mariculture farms. Like I haven't seen orange passion has not come on a mariculture base. Not that exact coral only exists as the orange passion that we have.
Huh. Good thing.
I've seen things that are very similar to Walt Disney, but so
yeah, I think that's true. And there's a couple different versions of orange passion too. On that note.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think in the States it's the SC orange passion, and then we have the RRC orange passion, but they seem to be the same. So I don't know what the original source was, but yeah. And I don't think I've seen things that look a lot like the home wrecker, but are not really like side by side, or not 100% as good. Like that's why I have a home wrecker on the website that I call Home Wrecker Junior, because I didn't really want to give it a new name. But I thought it was close enough to be like, okay, here's home wrecker for half the price, and it's just a little bit not as nice. So
I'm on your site right now looking it up.
Oh yeah.
I have to see what home wrecker junior looks like.
Yeah. So the other thing about wild collected is there's certain corals, like the non-colonial type LPS corals, like Welsophilia, Tracheophilia. We're just not really that good at culturing them yet, so they're generally wild collected. But I mean, I think that's going to change. Like, obviously people are starting to get better with fragment scolemia, acanthophilia, stuff like that. So I could see that changing. But right now it's like wild collection allows you to just go and grab a bunch of plate corals and whatever, and those are just not really being propagated. So we kind of need wild for that. But I mean, wild probably won't be around forever, right? We know that there'll be a certain point where it's just no longer a thing. So
now, if you know that, are you tempted to try and get more of a variety to grow out for future, just to have it, just because eventually it's not going to be there anymore?
Yeah. I mean, I wish I was I'm not the best at acanthophilia and scolemia and stuff like that. That's like Ryan, like Chummingham's Reef. That's his jam. He's that's kind of his reason for getting so into that stuff. It's like, I'm going to get a head start on how to frag and grow this stuff in a captive setup, so that if wild ever shuts down, I got a gold mine of this stuff, right? So I think that'll be a move I'll probably start in the next couple of years for sure.
Nice.
Yeah. So yeah, usually I would say wild collected corals, specifically like Acropora, but probably some of the other species too. They do come in a little healthier than maricultured. One of the reasons I think is also that, so if you get a shipment of Acropora from Australia, there's almost no tissue on that coral that isn't live tissue. So it's not on a base. It's usually just a big chunk of coral, right? So that kind of eliminates the whole rack iron thing, or whatever that, whatever is causing that recession issue. It's less of a place for pests to hide, eggs. So it's generally easy to process those corals for pests. So
when you import and get a new coral, how long do you let it just rest for in a tank and kind of recover from shipping before you frag off the bases and the rest of it?
Usually about a week. I mean, my LPS system is pretty low par compared to the SPS system. So the things will start to fade if I don't get them moved over pretty fast. But yeah, it could be any time within a week kind of thing. I've left it longer before, and I don't think it was good. So
that's fair.
Yeah. There's definitely a better setup I could have for imported coral, but it's just about space and time, and
Yeah, exactly. I've learned that lesson where sometimes freshly shipped stuff that's been in transit for too long is not fond of dipping. So letting it rest for a few days first is definitely beneficial if you have the space for it.
Totally. Yeah. No, always rest something in a little bit, I don't know, lower light, lower flow, not too low a flow, but just enough to kind of, just kind of give it a little break. It's like, I just traveled for 30 hours coming back from Indo, and I was freaking wiped out. I couldn't
Happens.
go back to my normal conditions right away.
Yeah, you got to
Was not ready.
reacclimate yourself back to
Yeah,
Canada.
totally.
Uh,
So one of the things with wild collected too is more of the wild collected stuff is coming from Australia, which obviously they have a whole different diversity of corals, so you get kind of totally different stuff.
mhm.
Malaysia, like I'd love to see more stuff coming from Malaysia. Really, really cool SPS, great LPS. We used to get wild collected from Fiji, and Fiji only ever really did wild collected. But so Walt Smith was the importer, and they had a really good program for like putting back a lot of coral into the reef for what they took. And also coral that say didn't color up or kind of work out the way they wanted it to, they would put back on the reef. So they had a good contributional thing. I don't know what happened with the government and the legality and why they had to stop exporting hard corals, but hopefully that starts again. Yeah, but it's kind of cool actually. Like there's like classic like Sarmentosa is like most. If you see a Sarmentosa, it's could have come from Australia, but most likely it's a Fiji piece originally.
Mhm.
I have a couple of Fiji pieces that, it's just cool knowing that I got some coral that came from a country that you can't get coral from anymore. So
That is cool.
yeah.
Is it also kind of cool knowing that you've like cherry picked some from the ocean to bring back? Like that's
for sure.
kind of fun in a way. Being like, I picked this one. I collected it off that off the rack, but still,
No,
it's still kind of fun.
I remember collecting a piece and being like, it could be nothing, could be really cool, and then I saw it under the lights and I was like, oh, that's like the best piece I got. So, yeah, definitely cool.
No, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, and again, these are industries that create jobs in various places, and it's cool. It creates awareness. It helps our hobby, and also, I mean, just to be clear, like wild collection is still just such a tiny impact on the environment. Like it's minuscule. Like when you fly over some of these areas where you say snorkeled or dove, and you just think for a second about how much coral is there, you could probably take all the coral that's in the entire aquarium hobby and put it in one of those little chunks of reef. It's like what we take is not very much.
No, it's true. Especially considering, if it's mariculture and they grow it out, they take a small frag of it and then grow it out, and it's very minimal. And
totally.
I often think the same thing about fish stuff too, right? We'll spend like a couple $100 on like some tang, and you'll see some place in Hawaii where they're just dinner. You're like,
yeah, totally. Yeah, no, I mean, I was at a fish market on Gili T, and I saw like a beautiful parrotfish and a red spotted grouper, and I was like, those are such cool fish. I'm like, it's kind of cool to eat one though.
Yeah.
just to know. I asked them, I'm like, do these actually taste good? And they're like, oh yeah, it's really good. Of course, they're trying to sell me on it, but so I didn't try it. Apparently, they're actually quite expensive. So
crazy.
Sometime I'll try it.
Yeah,
but it's a funny thing how we don't want to eat something that's beautiful. Like I'd rather eat a kind of a stupid looking fish with like a buggy eye, just kind of like silver scales, stupid looking. I'm fine with eating that, but
well, that's because you don't keep them as pets. You have a certain attachment to them.
Yeah, no, that's true.
It totally is. Yep.
So okay, the cons of wild collection. So
what else you got?
I mean, I would say it's a little bit more of a gamble whether you're going to get something good, because compared to the mariculture farms, their brood stock is a bit more tried and tested. Yeah. Whereas the wild collected, they kind of know the species and the types to collect. Like if you order from a lot of the Australian suppliers, you'll probably get strawberry shortcake. But it's not always going to be like gold every time. Like the last Aussie shipment I got, like, to be honest, I wasn't like long term. I was not very happy with it. So
here's a good one. Like Aussie, Indo, I mean, prior Fiji, Malaysia. Like out of all the places, what have you found the nicest or the best corals then? Like what would be your favorite?
The coral that I've seen from Malaysia is just absolutely like insane. Yeah. Like I don't know what it is about that region, because it's not super far from Indonesia, like parts of Indonesia. Yeah,
it's still in that little coral triangle area.
Yeah, it's just kind of up and over there and whatever. But there's something about the Malaysian, some of the speciosa and tenuis they have there for acros, and then they have really amazing torches and acanthos and stuff like that too. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm actually surprised because since Malaysia hasn't been an industry as long, you wouldn't have thought they'd had as much time to collect and to conjure and find the areas where all the good stuff comes from. Whereas Indonesia's been doing coral for, 20, 25 years or whatever.
But that
so
could
they've
that
had
could
more
be if
time to
there's
kind of figure out.
it could be though if there hasn't been the industry there, no one's been cherry picking, so there's like easier to find it. Maybe I don't know.
Maybe I don't know. There's a lot of coral though. In a healthy reef, it's like I mean, some of the diving and snorkeling I've done is just like you just look and you just see like fields of, but it's usually like staghorns like Formosa or things like that, and it's just the same coral over and over and over in that area. But yeah.
Lots of stags.
But yeah. So yeah, obviously like you still get pests on wild collected. That's going to happen. But I don't think as bad as the mariculture farms.
I guess that makes sense.
I think more of the pests actually probably come in the holding facilities, like because I think there's so much biological control, like in the ocean, that the wild pieces are generally not going to get, like generally you're not going to see as many pests like right on them. But at the holding facilities, say there's acropora flatworms in the system, those are going to breed and end up on the corals. So that's always a possibility. So. But yeah, that's kind of it for cons for that. I mean, again, you're shipping stuff from overseas. There's a bit of a carbon footprint involved in the shipping, which is the other reason to buy locally if you can.
Yeah.
So yeah, the next category is local aquaculture.
Yeah. So I mean, personally, I prefer local because it's healthy. It's in your tank very fast versus across the country. So it's just, I find, you're pretty guaranteed to have a healthy, happy, surviving coral versus a little more questionable due to the extra shipping stress. But.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of one of the most major parts of it is like it's adapted to aquarium conditions. It's tested, proven to be hardy. You know what it's going to look like when it's at its best, for the most part, like unless there's some total trickery of a photo online. It's just like we always know that like Oregon blue tort is going to be a blue coral, like, and the thing with some of those corals too is we don't actually see tortosa imported from mariculture or wild. It doesn't come in very often, and part of it is that it's not requested because we've gotten so good at growing it in the hobby that, we don't really need more of it. But this is another note I had actually is that because of these local aquaculture pieces that we grow in our own tanks, like we've had them long enough to know what they like. You know what I mean? Like if you bring in an order of coral, you have to figure out like, oh, what's the placement going to be like? Like I know that it's tenuous, but does it want this or this? Whereas like it's like we all kind of know like Hawkins Echinatas kind of wants this about this par and this amount of flow. And it's like we've learned about these corals as a group, as a community. And I think that's really cool, right? So actually, I'm in the process of writing descriptions for every coral on my website, which is a lot of freaking work.
I like that though. I appreciate that.
I wrote about 7 or 8 of them on the flight to Bali. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it should be good content. But yeah, I've been working on it. So
yeah, no, that's awesome. It's for someone that's a new coral to them, just giving them like a good idea of where it's going to be the happiest is big. So I think that's awesome you're doing that.
Yeah. And then we kind of talked about this can be bought and traded locally. Obviously that's really cool. You can have a backup with your friend. The other thing and this is a bit of a comparison to aquaculture versus mariculture, is if you grow a frag out from a frag, that frag is going to grow into the tank in a very natural way based on the flow and the lighting. Whereas if you take a full colony or a small colony, that colony is going to have to kind of find its way to sort of like look normal. It's kind of like if anybody's ever aquascaped their tank and they had a bunch of big colonies, like you kind of try to position them how they were growing, but it just never looks right. Yeah. So that's something I like about frags. Is frags are going to encrust. They're going to maybe eventually shoot out some branches either on the edge or the top. Yep. And then once they really start going, if your conditions are stable, you'll get a natural looking coral. And I think that's that's the beauty of the hobby, is the watching it grow into the tank,
It's true.
Part of the charm.
On I just remember this. One of the local guys, his old tank, just from all how his flow was, all his corals like leaned in the exact same way from his flow.
Oh
That always
yeah,
cracked
yeah,
me up.
yeah. Maybe a little bit too much flow.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
good.
The other thing I would say with local aquaculture, generally, I mean, if you're buying from a reputable seller or somebody that you know well, you can be more sure that you're not going to be importing pests, whether that
Yeah.
it be nuisance algae or coral pests.
Hmm.
But obviously, it still exists. So just be careful who you buy from, and still quarantine and dip and do what you got to do. But
Yep.
yeah.
That is definitely one benefit. Like I wonder, in 10 years from now, if if we weren't importing anything new, it was all in the hobby. I wonder if we get to a point where there'd be no more pests
I mean,
eventually.
that would be about everybody doing their diligence, and
Hmm.
I mean, it's hard to get everybody on board, but yeah, I mean, the cream kind of rises to the top in this hobby. So it's like the
Yeah.
people that don't, keep good, clean, healthy systems that are pest free, they're not going to survive long term, anyways. So
True.
yeah, maybe eventually we'll just have a super clean bunch of stuff. I mean, and that's something that's cool about aquaculture in the hobby, is that we're sort of preserving this, group of corals that we have, and keeping them for long term in the future. Like I've thought about this before, like I might have a coral in my system that, like, that region of the reef like bleached 6 years ago, and that morph of that piece doesn't even exist in the wild anymore. Could be a
Yeah.
unique piece that we just have in our hobby. So
Which
that's kind
which
of a cool thing to think about. Yeah.
yeah, that's crazy. It would definitely be interesting. I'm sure it will happen eventually. So
Yeah, well, inevitably. Let's hope not, but
the
it is
Frag
what it
Garage
is.
Museum of Coral.
Yeah. So cons, I would say, against aquaculture, unless you have
Hmm.
anything to add.
No, I agree. I mean, I've always been tempted to get it on orders when I see stuff being imported, but at the same time, like 99% of the time, I'm much more likely to buy something either like, locally where I can see it,
Yeah,
it's happy, it's in your tank within, a few hours, and it's pretty low risk
totally.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I don't tend to sell anything that I haven't had for about at least 6 months. Usually, that's
Hmm.
kind of the sweet spot, I
Yeah.
find. So, yeah. But yeah, cons of aquaculture. I mean, yeah, you might be buying a frag instead of a colony, or a frag instead of a mini colony. Like you're getting
Yeah.
something smaller, but like we said, it's like, it's something that's going to look good and do well. So
Yeah.
it takes some of the guesswork out.
Looks
Um,
good. Less likely to die on you.
yeah.
It's happier.
And then
Yeah.
we kind of talked about this too, but yeah, if we only had local aquaculture, we would never have anything new. So those people that
Hmm.
want new would eventually be like, oh, well, it's just all the same. That being said, like I've seen some little morphs and things happen in my systems. I've seen some like fluorescent green protein infection. I isolated a piece recently and
Yeah.
set it aside, and I'm growing it on its own little thing. I tried to get as
Nice.
much of the neon green color on that side as I could. So
Hmm.
so that'll be a cool future thing. So yeah,
Nice.
the more we get better at breeding corals, and like trying to splice them and do interesting things with them, that might be the way that we get some of the craziest stuff we've seen anyways. So
Have you tried much of
yeah,
splicing or trying to like blend corals, make hybrids?
I have tried with some millies before, and either they burn each other or they just grow kind of in tandem with each other and don't
Yeah.
like actually mix tissue.
Okay.
I mean, it's tough, because it's like you got to think genetically, like if you're exactly the same other than this one gene that makes you green and you red,
Hmm.
like would you mix tissue? Like I
I
don't know
know.
what's involved in the biology side of that, but I don't know. People should keep trying. Just try to make
Yeah.
weird shit happen in your tank,
And if it does,
and then maybe
amazing.
we'll get some cool stuff out of it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I actually just noticed in my LPS system some baby torches on the rack.
Nice. That's awesome.
So yeah, actually, this was a note I was going to mention. This was a cool thing that I learned at the farm. So there was a girl that worked in, and I should say, actually, this mariculture farm also does aquaculture, and a lot of these farms do. So sometimes they have an indoor part of the facility that's focused on fragging, and generally it won't be SPS, but this facility had a pretty cool setup for their LPS.
Hmm.
There was a girl that worked there, and she was telling us that on every new moon, like clockwork, all the torches
Yeah.
in the whole facility spawn.
Oh, that's cool.
every single new moon. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and because I got some torches from them, I'm waiting for the new moon and I'm going to watch them because they came from that facility. So I don't know if it's something that has to do with the water.
Hmm.
The lunar cycle wouldn't necessarily be directly affecting them because they're
Well,
indoors, right?
this is what I was gonna ask. If you're
Yeah.
trying to do that, are your lights mimicking the moon schedule? Because I know in nature,
Yeah.
like I witnessed like coral spawning, which was super cool, staghorn
Yeah.
spawning. But we
Well,
literally went diving when the new moon was, and we knew like it was time to the moon, so we knew within a couple of days of when the corals were going to spawn.
yeah.
So it was cool.
Well, it makes you wonder if it has to do with the new moon being a light-based thing, or is it a gravitational thing, or
Yeah,
is there something mystical that we
blend.
don't know about?
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
know.
I,
Yeah.
I know. I don't know if you've ever followed Jamie Craig stuff, but he does coral spawning, and same thing. Like the
Hmm.
rooms were like super super dark, so there's nothing else that
Hmm.
can perfectly mimic the moon cycles and
Hmm.
everything. And I
Yeah.
know that definitely played into it. So which is crazy,
Yeah.
but
Interesting. Okay. Well, I'm gonna. I can put the lunar cycle. I might
yeah,
have it off on the LPS system, but like I said, I do
should
have
do it.
baby torches going. So,
Yeah. Well, you're
um,
doing something right. So
it's not. I mean, whatever. They're doing something right. I'm just trying to keep them, happy. But um,
your conditions have appeased them.
they have appeased them to get it on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's hey.
The only other con is like I still have to give a con to pests because it's always a possibility, right?
Yeah.
But no, I don't know. I mean, that was kind of my main categories, and again, with there is aquaculture happening at some of these
Facilities.
facilities that do
Yeah.
wild collection. Like Australia is really good for that. They do a lot of fragging, and they've gotten really good at fragging scolemia, some
Hmm.
of those non-colonial type corals.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know. Somebody would have to like correct me on this, but I don't know if these farms are always plumbed into the ocean or if they're on their own
Mm.
water system. But as far as I know, Australia, like they don't even really buy pre-made salt in Australia. They just use ocean water. So
I'm gonna guess most of them
yeah,
are. I mean, if I
yeah,
lived by the ocean, I would just have a big pipe and a pump going way the heck out
yeah,
there.
totally. Just get it from at least a little ways out.
A
But
couple hundred
yeah,
feet
I
of
mean, the water
sprinkler
there
line.
is. It would be really nice, I'd like to not have to buy salt anymore, just buy water. But
How
yeah,
how far are you from the ocean?
I mean, not too far,
Like,
10 minutes.
do you think there's any difference? Like, I know obviously it's like cold
It's
water
yeah,
ocean.
the composition of our water here is pretty different. It's lower calcium, little
Mm.
different salinity, and I think like you do need to kind of get out there a little bit to get the water
Yeah,
that's like clean enough.
pristine.
But
Hmm.
yeah, I've heard of people doing it for like fish only tanks and
Yeah.
having good success with it. So
Huh.
it's not out of the question. But
You just need a place on the
then there's like
beach, some really long
yeah,
pipes, and just
yeah,
buff your
yeah,
water
yeah,
up. You'd be set.
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of fun. Um, yeah, let's see. I made a few more notes about the farms and stuff, but I think I kind of weaved it into the rest of the conversation. So
Hmm.
uh,
Yeah. I don't know. If I live close enough, I would totally try it. But
mhm.
obviously, I got a lake, so I got nothing to work with for the ocean here. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I guess I'll say like, yeah, if anybody that's a reef hobbyist or especially business owner in this hobby wants to go to Bali, like most of these owners of these farms are pretty accommodating for
hmm,
visitors, and you can at least probably visit the packing facility and check it out and see how they do it. And like even me, I'm kind of like small potatoes to them. Like I'm not like a big importer or anything. I only have about 1,000 gallons. I'm not, bringing in, you know, I don't know, 25 boxes of coral at a time. I'm
yeah.
just a small home-based operation. So,
That
so it's
being
nice that they
said,
still gave me the time of day.
it is. That being said, when you just how much I can't even see space on your racks behind you. I don't even know how you fit more coral into your systems. Like they are so packed.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I always find room though.
Yeah.
But yeah, right now it's pretty packed. Um, I,
Always room
I
for
kind
one
of,
more.
but I mean, my plan is to get the collection to the kind of stage I want it to, where I know everything is pest free and good, and then just kind of being like, okay, we're gonna just, I don't know. I keep telling myself I'm going to do this, and you can call me out on it if I don't, but I kind of want to get to a point where I'm pretty happy with what I have. And then I want to kind of just like turn my phone off to all of the orders that come up, because I still get tempted when it's like, oh, hey, Adam, we're doing an order. Do you want a couple boxes of this stuff?
Still got to scroll and peek and look.
Yeah. I know it's tough, because it's like you always kind of have this little childish excitement for something new. So, but there's some talk from a few people of bringing in some Malaysia. I can't say who or anything, but there's been some talks of this. And actually, the owner of the farm that I visited, he was dabbling into Malaysia at one point, and then I think things got a little bit complicated because of COVID and not a lot of shipping options, and he kind of left that behind. But I got him a little bit inspired to think about it again. So
nice.
Yeah,
promising.
So that's kind of cool. Yeah. Yep. So, and that's a country I never thought about visiting, but it would be pretty cool to.
You got a good excuse now.
Yeah,
go check it out. Let me know when you go. I'll have to come.
Totally. I'll bring me in. I'll be like a specialist. I'll be a cherry picking specialist or something. I don't know. But
on a side note, if you do go back, you should totally buy a waterproof UV flashlight. I did a night dive, and another guy I was with had one. It was just so cool seeing the corals fluoresce in the ocean.
Yeah. We did a night dive on Koh Tao in Thailand, and it was like the end of my advanced, and it was so cool. We the end of the dive, we all, like, our instructor said, okay, we're going to turn off our flashlights. So we don't actually turn them off. You just put it into your body, but you put it into your body, and then you wave your other hand like crazy, and the phosphorescence is just the brightest phosphorescence I've ever seen.
Isn't that cool?
So cool. Like, it's like, and that just exists all the time. It's just there, and unless you're down there, you wouldn't know. Like,
in the Caymans a few years ago, we went diving for doing some coral restoration stuff, and same thing. I turned off my flashlight. I remember because we had the moonlight, so you could still kind of see. But I remember the other guy in front of me, every time he kicked his flippers, I'd see like sparkles of bioluminescence in front of him, which was cool.
Yeah, totally. It's so cool.
100% off topic. I know you can buy those little like bio orb kits of like the bioluminescent algae, and I might actually get one and try it just because I think it'd be fun. But I've always kind of like I'm sure your skimmer would take it out 2 minutes, but I always wondered, like, if you put it in your tank, how long it would live for, and if it would like light up from all the flow.
So it's like a bioluminescent algae that is it supposed to be able to live in your tank, or?
Well, not in a reef tank, but you can buy like little orbs and things, and you feed it.
Oh, yeah.
And you do it, and when you switch it around, it lights up and close. I'm going to order one. They look fun.
Yeah, well, I mean, I still enjoy the party trick when I have people over here. I'm putting some of the Red Sea amino in the tank.
Yeah.
People freaking love that.
Yeah.
It's like, it looks like antifreeze in the tank. It's pretty fun.
I know.
Yeah, but I wondered if I missed anything on my my notes here, but I think that's pretty good. I'm not in the chat right now, so let me see if I can get it going without hearing sound.
Plenty of dive site in Malaysia, especially on the eastern coast of the peninsula of Malaysia. Here. Oh, I'd love to go to Malaysia, Bali, all these places. I need to go diving one day. Need to ReefDudes trip. Got to work on this.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, it's hard when you have a fresh
frag of myself.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah. Eventually, it's going to happen.
Yeah, and I mean, my hope is to make a trip that's a fully coral-based trip, maybe in the next couple of years. And I mean, you get a different product in like Jakarta has like fairly different coral than they have in Bali, and it's all kind of like very different, like from place to place. So actually, one of the farms that I've seen orders come in from Jakarta, the Acropora is like almost like a time capsule of like 10 years ago Acropora. Like all the species and the morphs are like, it's like all the stuff and you just know that their brood stock has not been updated in so long, and they've just been growing the exact same coral over and over and over. So but still nice though, because it's nice knowing that you're like, oh, I wish I could still get that pink Millie that I got from that supplier, and it's like they're still doing it. So kind of cool.
That is cool. Do you I don't know. this is probably, I don't know if you're allowed to do it, but if I lived on the ocean, it'd be so cool to just like build your own, like not even for aquaculture, but just like build yourself a tiny reef, get some little frags and put them out there and
Hmm.
let it grow into something. And all of a sudden you have your own reef, 5 years later.
And
It'd
I
be pretty
don't know
cool.
why, but I have a dream about that every once in a
Yeah.
while, where like all of a sudden, like the like super freaking cold like Pacific Ocean that's near me
Warms up.
is like is warm enough to keep corals in, and I just kind of take some corals there and leave them and come back, and it's like, oh, everything's grown really well. Yeah, let's take it home now. It would be
Yeah.
nice, but yeah,
Good old global
that's
warming's got to step it up for
yeah,
that to happen.
yeah, that's like the positive hope of global warming, but
Okay.
yeah.
Completely off topic, but have you done diving out off like Vancouver Island? And is there like, have you seen any like cool freshwater coral? I guess not freshwater, but cold water corals.
Local water. No, I don't dive here. I'm a little bit of a cold sissy,
Yeah.
and like the diving here is a little more. I mean, I have a really good friend that dives here, and he's more of a tech diver, and he doesn't really care as much about biology. And I'm more of like, I like shallow water diving where I can just like, I just feel like I'm close to all the living
Yeah.
things. So, yeah, I mean, I'll eventually do it. But honestly, this last trip, like we only snorkeled, and some of the best snorkeling was just as good as some of the best diving I've ever done.
Yeah.
The only difference is you can't stay down,
Hmm.
for very long. But yeah, I mean, I'll have to show you some of the videos I made, but
Heck yes.
it's wicked. Like, like just off the beach on Gili T, like you can take so Gili T is one of the islands that's the Gili Islands are just off of the coast of Lombok, which is the next country to the right of Bali.
Hmm.
And we did a snorkel tour. It was cool. We saw some turtles, stuff like that. But then I just got in front of our hotel, right in front of our hotel, and it was the best snorkeling of the whole trip.
Really?
I saw a
Nice.
little peacock mantis shrimp. I followed him around for a while. I got some video of him. He was just as interested in me as I was in him. He was kind of kept looking up at me and kind of being like, "What's up?" And then
That's
a
cool.
clownfish bit me, and then it's pretty funny actually. But yeah, so don't overlook the like if you're in a good location like that, like especially like I mean closer to where we are. If you go to Cancun and you go to Cozumel, Cozumel has some awesome places just off the beach that you can just snorkel. That's like in a way better than a snorkeling tour because you aren't that deep. You can just literally walk around.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously pros and cons of diving. Diving's expensive. It's a little bit
Yeah.
more of an endeavor, but it's cool because you get to go down and stay down.
Hmm. Exactly. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Either way, the ocean's an amazing place. It's fun to explore, and I don't know.
Yeah.
So do we have to wait 6 months to see what's on your website to see what kind of goodies you brought back?
Yeah, well, like I was telling you, the nicest piece that I was the most excited about is peeling from the base up. So, yeah.
Did
and
you frag off
two of
some
the
tips
I probably will, but I just know how these
after
things
this
go.
stream?
You can tell from
Just do
looking at the tissue and the polyps that there probably isn't a lot I can do. I don't really want to do anything aggressive as far as antibiotic dips or anything, but I might try something. We'll
frag
see.
off, like a little tip after
Yeah.
the stream, and just
Yeah, I will.
that has saved things for me in the past.
Okay,
So
yeah, no, I'll
it's
save
worth
a
it.
Devon branch and an Adam
Yeah.
branch, and
Okay.
yeah, hopefully one survives. But
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, but yeah, it just kind of is what it is. I got some really nice millies that are looking really good, so we'll see how they look in a few months, and yeah, I mean it's still pretty exciting overall. I got some really nice Euphilia. I got one chalice that was at their sorting facility, and it was I was going to try to get both of them, and the guy came up to me and said, "Oh no, you can only take one." He's like, and then his English wasn't very good, and the guy explained to me, he's like, "You can't take both because then we don't have another one to grow." And then I realized that those were the only two out of their entire business.
Yeah.
Like they didn't even have any in their ocean farm. So I have one of two chalices that exist, and it's super crazy looking.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, so
What
that was
colors?
probably the coolest thing I was able to grab.
What colors is it?
It kind of like it's red and yellow and kind of bluish,
Ooh,
darker
cool.
color, but it's the pattern on it that like looks like it's almost like a cheetah leopard print kind of pattern. I've never really
that's cool.
seen something with that pattern before.
Okay, you gotta send me some
yeah.
photos later. That sounds cool.
Yeah, and even my friend that he hooked me up with the owner of this farm, and he did the importing for me. he told me that he'd seen that piece in the farm before and they wouldn't sell it to him.
Yeah.
So I was lucky to get it. So
Nice.
So that's probably like the most special piece that I got.
Yeah.
But it definitely wasn't cheap. So yeah.
Yep. That happens.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome though.
Yeah, they know. I mean, that's the other thing that's really changed about mariculture is that, in the past 10 years, like all of these people in these developing countries have smartphones and they know what we sell stuff for. And they know that we frag stuff up and cut it up. And, they know they can sell smaller. They can charge more for premium.
So when it used to be $10, now it's $100. Plus
a
fortune in shipping.
Luckily, this farm... they don't charge a premium for higher end Acropora. It's just Acropora are all the same price. So that's why it's nice if you can cherry pick, because then you can get all stuff you want instead of some stuff you want.
Yeah, that's very true. That's actually kind of nice if it's just like all acros are the same price and you just pick what you want. But I guess the thing, like, you obviously have a business around it, but like as a person, I've looked at importing stuff and you're like, oh, it looks so cheap on the price list, but then you don't realize it's going to cost you 4 times as much by the time you go through the permits and the shipping and all the hassle of it. And it's definitely a lot more by the time it's actually landed, like at least 4x more.
Well, and more. Your episode that you did with Matt Ryan is pretty, that he really breaks it down. The truth, the reality of it all, from an importer's perspective. And it's, it is a lot of things. It's the shipping, the DOA, and even, that's not even accounting for the longer term losses. Like, I think out of the stuff I sent back, like I didn't do a huge order of acros, but it was like 25 acros or something like that. I think I've lost about 6 or 7 of them.
Yeah.
Like a few of them within the first week, and then 2 or 3 of them are just, I can tell they're probably not going to make it. So, it is what it is. It's just part of it. So
part of how it works. But more fun, a little more diversity. It's good. All right. I won't keep you too late, but I definitely enjoy hearing about your trip. That's pretty awesome. One day we'll have to plan a rendezvous somewhere tropical,
I would
for
be
some coral
super down. We'll try to get maybe just get a small little select group of us obsessed coral people out, and then we'll just meet up somewhere and just nerd the hell out.
Oh, it'd be amazing. Would love it.
That would be awesome.
In the next year or two, we'll work on something.
Totally.
Yep. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Adam, thank you for coming on and filling us in on your Indo trip and checking out some of the coral farms. So I think it's super amazing that you're able to like cherry pick some and bring them back or get them imported back, which is really cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. Yeah.
And in 6 months from now, the 75% of the really pretty survivors will probably be on your website. So if you're watching this in the future, it's linked below. So check it out. If you guys are enjoying this, be sure to hit that like button. Give YouTube some love. Niagara Fire Corals, thanks for the super chat. Appreciate that. All right, guys, we will catch you guys on a future live stream.
Thanks, man.